Claire Bennett was halfway through a 12-hour night shift when her phone finally buzzed. 10:34 p.m. The staff lounge smelled like bleach and burnt coffee. She expected a text about the custody hearing or a patient's labs. Instead, she saw Sophie, voicemail, 018. She pressed play. "Mom, Grandma Linda said the table is full. She told me to leave the gifts outside. I'm walking home. I'm okay. Merry Christmas." Claire's knees went soft. She stared at her left hand, still wearing the plastic reindeer ring Sophie had slipped on her finger that morning, and tried to picture her 10-year-old on a dark street. Hours earlier, Sophie had been so proud. She'd wrapped every present in yesterday's newspaper because real wrapping paper was too expensive this year, then sealed the corners with red tape and a single gold star sticker. She'd hugged Claire at the apartment door and promised, "I'll be good at Grandma's." At 5:28 p.m., Sophie had stepped onto Linda and Frank Bennett's porch with a tote bag of gifts and cheeks pink from the cold. Through the window, she could see the glow of the tree lights, hear Bing Crosby drifting over the clink of forks, her Uncle Evan's laugh, her cousin shouting, an empty chair pulled halfway out like it had been waiting. Linda opened the door just wide enough to block the warmth with her body. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Sophie, honey, we've got a situation." She glanced over her shoulder toward the dining room, then lowered her voice like this was a favor. "The table's full. Evan's in-laws showed up. There's nowhere for you to sit." Sophie blinked. "But I'm family." Linda's face tightened. "Don't make this hard. Just set the gifts down and go on home. Your mom will pick them up tomorrow." Behind Linda, Frank stood in the hallway, silent as a coat rack. Evan looked out from the dining room, saw Sophie's tote bag, and turned away. The door closed. Outside, the porch light buzzed. Snowflakes spun in the beam like ash. Sophie looked at the tote bag straps cutting into her gloves, then turned and started down the sidewalk alone. Claire didn't know any of that yet. All she had was a voicemail, a timestamp, and the sudden understanding that the people she trusted with her child had chosen comfort over blood. And somewhere on that street, a camera had already caught Sophie walking into the dark. At Mercy General's emergency department, Claire Bennett moved on muscle memory. Gloved hands, steady voice, eyes scanning monitors. 42, 5'4", hair shoved under a cap, she still carried the gentleness that made frightened patients reach for her. She was the nurse who tucked warm blankets around strangers and scribbled, "Call your daughter," on discharge papers for lonely men. Tonight, Christmas night, she'd swapped shifts with a co-worker who wanted to see his grandkids. Claire had told herself it was fine. Overtime meant groceries, and Sophie needed new sneakers. Besides, Sophie would be safe at Linda's, surrounded by family, eating the pie Claire couldn't afford to bake. Between traumas, Claire checked her phone again. No missed calls now, just that voicemail. She walked into the supply closet, pressed her forehead to the metal shelf, and forced her breathing to slow. "Think," she whispered. "Don't panic." She called Linda. Straight to voicemail. She called Evan. No answer. She texted, "Can you please put Sophie on? She's scared." Read receipt. None. In her locker sat a framed school photo of Sophie in a crooked Santa hat. Front tooth missing, grin too big for her face. Claire's own wedding ring used to sit beside it. The ring was gone now. Sold last spring to cover a medical copay, but the pale line on her finger still looked like a promise. A code alarm blared. Claire ran back out, did compressions, counted meds, coached a young resident through a chest tube. When the patient finally stabilized, her hands started shaking for real. Her charge nurse, Dana, caught her by the elbow. "Claire, go drink water. You're white as the sheet." "My kid is missing," Claire said, the words tasting like metal. "My mother-in-law won't answer." Dana's face hardened. "Call security. File it. Then call whoever lives near you." Claire thumbed her contact list and hit Marisol, apartment 3B, the neighbor who watched Sophie after school when Claire was stuck late. Marisol picked up on the second ring. "Claire, what's wrong?" "Have you seen Sophie tonight?" Claire asked. A pause. Then softly, "No, but I can check the hallway camera. Give me 1 minute." Claire stared at the clock above triage, 11:07 p.m. Every second sounded loud. On the wall monitor, the hospital lobby camera looped silently, reminding her that cameras never forget either. Marisol's next text made Claire's stomach drop. "I just saw Sophie, and she's alone." Claire clocked out at 6:12 a.m., but she didn't go home. She sat in her Corolla on level B of the garage with the heater blasting and the custody calendar open on her lap. January 9th was circled in red. Hearing. Beside it, her lawyer had written one sentence that kept her quiet for months. Stable home, stable support, no drama. That was why she'd let Linda pick Sophie up in the first place. Ryan, her ex, had filed for primary custody the week he learned Claire's overtime checks were being garnished for an old hospital bill. He spun it as financial instability. His attorney loved that phrase. Claire's attorney loved it less. Every extra shift was meant to prove she could provide, but it also meant she needed child care. Linda had offered loudly in front of witnesses at the last mediation, "Of course we'll help. Sophie is our granddaughter." Claire had nodded and swallowed her pride because judges notice grandparents. Now those same grandparents weren't answering, and Ryan would use the smallest crack like a crowbar. Her bank app showed $143.18. Rent was due in 4 days. The gas light was on. In the passenger seat sat a pharmacy bag with her dad's heart meds. 2 refills she'd put on her credit card because he refused to be a burden. Her own card was already maxed from Sophie's asthma inhalers and the retainer payment she'd split into installments. Claire called Marisol back with shaking fingers. "What did you see?" "I pulled the footage," Marisol said. "Hallway cam. Sophie came in at 6:01, still wearing her coat. She looked confused. I'm sending it." A video thumbnail appeared, grainy but clear enough. Sophie's small frame, the tote bag dragging, her shoulders hunched. Claire hit play and watched her daughter fumble with the lock like an adult who'd practiced being brave. Claire's throat closed. She wanted to drive straight to Linda's house and pound on that door until the whole neighborhood woke up. But she heard her lawyer's voice again. No drama. He'd warned her. Angry calls become affidavits. Slammed doors become instability on paper. Her stomach clenched at the thought. Then her phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. It was Ryan's attorney. "FYI, your in-laws called. They said you left Sophie unsupervised tonight." And beneath it, a second text popped up from Linda. "Keep quiet, or I'll repeat that in court." Claire reached Marisol's door at 6:38 a.m., still in scrubs, badge flipped backward, hair smelling like antiseptic. Marisol opened before Claire knocked. "She's in the kitchen," Marisol whispered. Sophie sat at the table in Marisol's tiny apartment, wrapped in a fleece throw patterned with cartoon llamas. A mug of cocoa steamed beside her, untouched. When she saw Claire, she tried to smile, but her lips trembled. Claire crossed the room and knelt. "Hey, Peanut, I'm here." She held her daughter so gently it hurt. Marisol slid a phone across the counter. "I saved everything. Hallway cam, lobby cam, and the exterior lot camera. Timestamps are on screen." On the display, Sophie appeared again. 6:01 p.m., dragging the tote bag down the corridor. Another clip showed her pushing through the front door, glancing back at the street like she expected someone to call her name. Claire swallowed. Evidence. Real, boring, undeniable evidence. She took Sophie home, turned the thermostat up, and hung the damp, newspaper-wrapped gifts to dry over the shower rod. Sophie watched them drip, then said, "Very small. Grandpa didn't say anything. He just looked away." Claire's phone buzzed. A new notification. Linda had posted a Christmas photo. 12 people around a sparkling table, wine glasses raised. The caption read, "So grateful for family." In the comments, someone wrote, "Where's Sophie?" Linda replied, "With her mother, safe and loved." Claire's stomach turned at the practiced lie. She opened her notes app and started a timeline the way she charted meds. 5:30 door closed. 5:52 voicemail. 6:01 lobby video. 11:07 Marisol confirmation. She emailed the clips to herself, then to Dana at the hospital, who promised to store copies off-site. She didn't call Linda back. Not yet. First, she photographed Sophie's cracked mittens, the frost on her eyelashes in Marisol's video, the mileage map on her dashboard. If this turned into court, Claire wanted facts, not fury to protect Sophie. At 8:14 a.m., Ryan finally called. His voice was syrupy. "My mom says Sophie was left alone. That's serious, Claire." Behind him, Claire heard keyboard clicks. Someone listening in. "She wasn't alone," Claire said. "I have video." A pause. Then Ryan exhaled, pleased. "Good. Then you won't mind showing it to the officer I just sent for a welfare check." Outside, tires crunched on gravel. Through the blinds, Claire saw a patrol car stop, and Linda climbing out behind it. The knock came hard, official, 3 beats that rattled the peephole. Claire slipped her phone into her pocket and opened the door with Sophie behind her, fingers hooked into Claire's shirt. Officer Brooks stood on the landing. Behind him, Linda Bennett appeared in a camel coat and pearl studs, eyes already wet. Her voice rose for the hallway to hear. "Thank God, my granddaughter was abandoned." Claire kept her tone flat. "She wasn't abandoned. She came home. A neighbor stayed with her. I have video." Linda's face pinched, then softened. "Claire, don't do this. You've been under so much stress, night shifts, bills. You're overwhelmed." That was Linda's talent, turning cruelty into concern, then using concern like a leash. Officer Brooks glanced past Claire into the apartment. Warm now, but small. A pile of overdue envelopes sat by the coffee maker. "We got a welfare check call," he said. "Report says the child was left alone." Claire nodded and started recording. "Sophie, tell him what happened." Sophie lifted her chin. "Grandma said there was no room. She shut the door. I walked home. Ms. Marisol gave me cocoa." Linda made a wounded sound. "That's not true. She misunderstood. Children dramatize." She turned to the officer, perfectly composed. "My son's custody attorney advised we document everything. Claire can be..." Volatile. Claire felt the old fear clamp down. Ryan, of course, even when he wasn't present, he could weaponize a sentence, a rumor, a single bad look in court. Claire opened her email and held her screen out. Time-stamped hallway footage, lobby footage. My neighbor saved copies and sent them to my charge nurse. She added, "Your body camera is on, right?" Officer Brooks's eyes flicked to the unit on his chest. "Yes, ma'am." Linda's smile froze. For the first time, her voice dropped to a whisper, meant only for Claire. "You think you can embarrass me and keep your daughter?" She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded packet. "Officer, I have a temporary guardianship form. Ryan's lawyer says it's best if Sophie comes with me today, just until Claire calms down." Sophie's hand tightened on Claire's shirt. Officer Brooks took the papers, scanned them, then looked up. "Ms. Bennett, I need you to wait downstairs." He turned to Claire. "Ma'am, step into the hallway. I need to ask you a few questions, alone." And Linda walked away, dialing, smiling, sure she'd won. Officer Brooks guided Claire into the hallway, keeping his voice low. "Ma'am, I need facts. When did you last see your daughter before tonight?" 3:55 yesterday, Claire said. "Linda picked her up for dinner while I worked a double. I got a voicemail at 10:34 saying Sophie was turned away and walked home. My neighbor confirmed her on camera at 6:01. Brooks nodded, watching her more than the story. "Any prior reports? Domestic issues?" Claire swallowed. "Divorce. Custody hearing in 3 weeks. That's why I'm documenting everything." She held up her phone. "These clips have timestamps. Your body cam does too." Brooks glanced down the stairs. In the lobby below, Linda's laugh floated up. Staged. Claire heard another voice with it, male and impatient. "Who's that?" Claire asked. "My sergeant," Brooks said, yet his eyes narrowed like he wasn't sure. He stepped aside to make a call. Claire leaned toward the stairwell and saw Linda by the mailboxes, phone to her ear, speaker on. A man in a suit held a leather folder like he'd been waiting. "Officer, you're on a line," the man said. "Melissa Carver, counsel for Ryan Bennett. We're requesting you remove the child for immediate placement with the grandparents." Claire's blood ran cold. Ryan had sent an attorney on Christmas to her door. Brooks returned, jaw tight. "Ms. Carver, I'm not a family court judge. Without a court order, the child stays." Linda's face snapped. "Then write it down. Write down she's unstable. Look at her place. Bills everywhere. No tree, no father, no family." Claire forced her hand still. "You told a 10-year-old there was no room. That's the fact." Brooks held up a palm. "Ma'am, I'm documenting what I observed and what the child stated. I suggest you both contact your attorneys. If anyone tries to take the child without a court order, call 911. Linda's smile came back like a mask. "Fine. We'll do it the right way." She swept past Claire, brushing her shoulder on purpose. "You'll be sorry," she hissed, sweet enough for the cameras. Inside, Sophie's eyes were huge. "Am I going with Grandma?" Claire pulled her close. "No, not today." Her phone buzzed, an email subject line from Ryan's lawyer, "Emergency motion for temporary custody," filed. Claire scrolled once, then tapped a name she hadn't called in years. "Eleanor Bennett," the great-grandmother answered, "and you'd better tell me now what happened to my great-grandchild." Eleanor Bennett's voice was gravel and steel. "Start at the porch," she said. "Slow. Dates." Claire sat on her couch, with Sophie curled against her hip, watching cartoons with the volume off. "Yesterday, 5:28 p.m., Linda's house on Maple Crest. Sophie knocked. Linda told her the table was full, told her to leave gifts outside. She shut the door. Claire's nails dug into her palm. Sophie walked home. I have hallway and lobby footage, time-stamped. A patrol officer saw it on my phone. Ryan's lawyer showed up and tried to push temporary guardianship papers. Eleanor let out a thin breath. Linda did that in my home. Claire blinked. Your home? That house is held in the Bennett Family Trust. I'm the trustee. Linda and Frank live there because I allowed it, not because they own one nail. Eleanor's tone sharpened. Do you understand what she did? She used my roof to shame a child. Sophie looked up. Who is that? Great-Grandma Eleanor, Claire said softly. Hello, sweetheart, Eleanor said, and for a second the steel warmed. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. Tears stung Claire's eyes. She wiped them fast. They're saying I abandoned her. I've watched Linda rewrite reality for 60 years, Eleanor said. She thinks if she speaks first, she wins. A pause. Last Christmas, she told me Sophie preferred the little table in the den. I believed her. I won't again. Claire's stomach twisted. Ryan filed an emergency motion. If he convinces a judge I'm unstable, then we remove the leash, Eleanor cut in. Email me every clip, every text, the officer's name, and tell your neighbor to keep the originals. Claire heard paper sliding like a folder opening. At 8 o'clock, my attorney will draft a notice. Certified mail, 30 days. Claire stared at Sophie's damp gifts drying on the shower rod. You'd evict your own daughter? I'd protect my great-granddaughter, Eleanor said. Linda chose her side when she closed that door. Her voice dropped. And Claire, if they've been making money off that house, I want proof. Claire's throat went tight. She remembered the locked basement door, the separate keypad Linda had installed for storage. She opened an app, typed the address, and her screen populated with a listing. $99 a night. The photos showed Eleanor's antique fireplace and the brass wreath hook Sophie had stood beneath. The listing read, Cozy Private Suite, hosted by Linda B., and it had 47 reviews. Claire didn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table while Sophie colored quietly, the old space heater humming by their feet. On her laptop, the Airbnb listing glowed like an accusation. Photos of Eleanor's fireplace, Eleanor's china cabinet, Eleanor's porch swing, captioned, Charming Private Suite. Host, Linda B. Claire screenshot every page. Address, calendar, nightly rate, the superhost badge, the review count. She scrolled to the payout section Linda had left visible in a help link and grabbed the host profile photo too. Then she zipped everything into a folder titled Bennett Trust. Eleanor called back at 7:19 a.m. Send it, she ordered. I'm forwarding it to my attorney, Elliot Graves. He knows exactly how to freeze evidence before it disappears. Claire emailed the folder, then printed copies at the hospital kiosk on her way home from Sophie's school drop-off. The printer spit out paper after paper, timestamps, URLs, little proof of a lie becoming profit. Claire held the stack like it could keep her daughter warm. At noon, Marisol knocked with a flash drive. I pulled higher resolution, she said, and I backed it up to cloud, 3 places. She pointed to the clip where Sophie entered the lobby and glanced over her shoulder. That look, she expected someone to call her back. Claire's chest tightened. They're building a story that I abandoned her. Then we build the real one, Marisol said matter of fact. You have video, you have texts, you have the patrol report. A new email arrived while they talked, Ryan's attorney again, attaching affidavits from Linda and Frank. The subject line read, "Child endangerment." Claire opened the PDF and read Linda's words. Sophie refused to stay and ran off. Frank's statement was one sentence. "We tried our best." Claire's hands went cold, but she didn't shake this time. She forwarded everything to Elliot Graves, including Officer Brooks's badge number and the body cam note. Then she opened the Airbnb app again. The listing had vanished. Marisol swore under her breath. She deleted it. Claire's phone rang. Unknown number. "This is Elliot Graves," a calm male voice said. "We already preserved the listing through an archive service. Now I need one more piece. Porch footage. Anything showing Linda turning Sophie away." Claire stared at the screen, thinking of Maple Crest and the houses lined with doorbells and cameras. A neighbor's Ring camera was about to become the witness Linda couldn't silence. By 3:10 p.m., Claire was back in her car, Sophie's school backpack on the passenger seat, and Elliot Graves on speaker. "Maple Crest has doorbells everywhere," Elliot said. "We just need one neighbor willing to share." Claire drove to Linda's neighborhood like she was entering enemy territory. Trim hedges, wreaths still hanging, SUVs lined up like trophies. She parked 2 houses down from the Bennett place and walked up to a blue Colonial with a silver Palmer plaque by the bell. An older woman opened the door, cardigan buttoned to her chin. "Yes?" "Mrs. Palmer, I'm Claire Bennett. I'm Sophie's mom." Claire kept her voice steady. "I'm sorry to bother you. I think your Ring camera may have recorded my daughter on Christmas." Mrs. Palmer's eyes flicked toward Linda's porch. "I saw a little girl out there," she admitted. "I thought she was going to a friend's." "She was turned away," Claire said. "She walked home alone. I have hallway footage, but I need the porch moment." Mrs. Palmer swallowed. "Your mother-in-law runs the church bake sale. She told everyone you're unstable." Claire held up her phone. "I'm recording for accuracy. I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm asking you to tell the truth." The woman hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, her living room smelled like lemon polish and old books. She tapped her tablet, opened the Ring app, and scrolled. December 25th, 5:31. A thumbnail appeared. Sophie on the porch, with a tote bag, Linda blocking the doorway. Claire's breath caught as audio played, Linda's voice crisp and cold. "There's no room. Leave the gifts. Go home." Mrs. Palmer covered her mouth. "Oh, my Lord." A car door slammed outside. Through the window, Linda marched up the Palmer walkway, pearls flashing. She knocked hard. "Dorothy, open up." Mrs. Palmer froze. Linda's voice sharpened. "I know you have cameras. Delete that clip. That child ran off. Claire is trying to ruin us." Claire opened the door herself. Phone still recording. "You told my daughter there was no room." Linda's smile snapped into place. "Officer, there she is, harassing my neighbors." No officer stood behind her, just Ryan's attorney, Melissa Carver, holding a stamped packet. "Emergency hearing," Carver said calmly. 2 hours. Bring the child." Claire stared at the court seal, realizing Linda planned this before Sophie ever knocked, and on the top page, Claire read the words, "Temporary custody. Granted." Melissa Carver didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She held the stamped order at Claire like a menu item already chosen. "Temporary custody. Today," she said. "Pickup is immediate. Refusal becomes contempt. Linda stood beside her, chin lifted, eyes bright with triumph. "Sophie, sweetie, come to Grandma. Mommy needs a break." Claire felt Dorothy Palmer behind her, a steady presence in the doorway, and she forced herself not to lunge. "This order is based on lies," Claire said. "You turned her away. She walked home. I have video." Carver's smile was thin. "Save it for the hearing. 2 hours. Family court, room 3C. Until then, the order stands." Sophie stepped closer to Claire, clutching the tote bag like a shield. One corner of newspaper wrapping had torn, exposing a gold star sticker. Claire's throat burned. She could still smell hospital sanitizer on her sleeves. "May I see the seal?" Claire asked. Carver angled the pages. It was real, signed, dated. Claire's stomach dropped anyway. This wasn't just a threat. It was a lever, and Ryan would pry with it today, smiling in court while she bled in silence again. Linda leaned in, low enough that only Claire could hear. "You wanted receipts? Here's mine." Dorothy's voice cut in, calm and loud. "I'm Mrs. Palmer. My Ring camera recorded the porch. I heard what you said to that child." Linda's head snapped. "Dorothy, stay out of this." Carver's eyes flicked to Dorothy's tablet, then back to Claire. "Ma'am, don't complicate things." Claire hit record again. "Sophie, do you want to go?" Sophie shook her head hard. "No." Linda's smile never moved. "She's confused." A second car rolled up. County sheriff, not city police. The deputy stepped out with a clipboard, already neutral. "Ms. Bennett?" he asked. "I'm here for the child transfer." Claire's hands went icy. She looked at the neighbor's lawn, the wreath on Linda's door, the winter sun shining like nothing mattered. Then she bent to Sophie. "Listen to me," she whispered. "You did nothing wrong. I'm coming for you fast. Keep your phone on. Call Marisol or Dana if you're scared." Sophie's eyes filled, but she nodded once, brave in the worst way. Linda reached for her. Claire let go. Dorothy Palmer lifted her tablet and said, "I have the porch footage, and I'm emailing it to the judge right now." The courthouse smelled like wet wool and old coffee. Claire climbed the front steps with Dorothy Palmer's email still open on her phone, the Ring clip attached, subject line, "Porch Video, December 25th. Elliot Graves met her at the security line, gray suit, calm eyes. "You did the right thing," he murmured. "Let them talk. We answer with documents." They were already talking. In the hallway outside room 3C, Linda stood with 2 women from her church. Powder blue scarves, pearl earrings, faces fixed in pity. Ryan leaned against the wall beside Melissa Carver, arms folded like he owned the building. When he saw Claire, he smiled without warmth. "There she is," Linda said, loud enough for strangers to turn. "The nurse who leaves her child alone?" Heads swiveled. A father tugged his son closer. A clerk glanced at Claire's scrubs as if they were evidence of something dirty. Claire felt heat crawl up her neck, that familiar shame she'd swallowed for years, but she kept her chin level and held her folder tighter. Sophie was there, too, sitting on a plastic bench between Linda and Frank, feet not touching the floor. Her eyes found Claire's and went glassy. Claire took one step forward. A deputy shifted to block her. "Not until the hearing," he said. Ryan's voice stayed soft, poisonous. "If you'd just cooperate, Sophie wouldn't be in the middle." Elliot opened his laptop on a narrow ledge. "We have hallway footage, lobby footage, time-stamped," he said steady. "And now the porch." Carver's gaze flicked to the attachment. Cute, she said. We'll argue it's altered. Claire's stomach dipped, but she didn't flinch. Then subpoena the original. Dorothy saved it in 3 places. A vending machine hummed nearby. Claire realized she hadn't eaten since yesterday. She fed her debit card into the slot for a granola bar. Declined. Again. Declined. Her phone buzzed. Bank alert. Account restricted. Then another notification from Ryan. You don't get money until you stop fighting. Claire's breath caught. Fear tried to turn her knees to water. She looked up at Sophie, at Linda's satisfied mouth, at the deputy's hand resting on his belt. Then a door opened. A court clerk stepped out, scanned the hall, and stopped on Claire. Ms. Bennett, she asked. The judge viewed the porch video. She wants you in chambers now. Ms. Bennett, the clerk said, the judge watched the porch video. Please come into chambers right away. Judge Halloway's chambers were quieter than the hallway, the kind of quiet that made Claire hear her own heartbeat. The judge, silver hair, reading glasses, paused the clerk's notebook and looked at her. Ms. Bennett, I watched the porch clip twice, she said. Your child is turned away. That matters. But I need to know something. Why didn't you call police that night? Claire swallowed. Because my custody hearing is in 3 weeks. Any domestic incident becomes a weapon. I finished my shift, secured my daughter with a neighbor, and started documenting. I have hospital supervisors who can confirm my hours. Carver stepped in, smooth as oil. Your Honor, the mother is spinning. The grandparents offered care. She chose work. The judge lifted a hand. Counsel, I'm not taking argument in chambers. She turned back to Claire. Do you have originals of the hallway and lobby footage? Yes, Claire said. My neighbor saved originals. My charge nurse has copies. The patrol officer's body cam confirms he viewed them. The judge nodded once, writing, I'm ordering the transfer paused until we finish today's hearing. The child remains with the grandparents in the building for now. Her eyes softened a fraction. Stay composed, Ms. Bennett. Evidence works when you do. Outside the door, the hallway noise rushed back. Claire's legs remembered they could shake. Elliot guided her to the restroom near the humming vending machines like she was a patient after surgery. In the last stall, Claire slid down the wall and pressed her fist to her mouth. She opened Sophie's voicemail again and listened, not because she needed to, but because her brain kept trying to deny it. Grandma said the table is full. Claire's chest squeezed until breathing felt like lifting a weight. She pictured Sophie standing under that porch light, tote bag biting into her gloves, and anger rose hot enough to burn the fear away. I'm done begging, she told herself. Done swallowing. Done playing small so other people can stay comfortable. Her phone vibrated. Overdraft fee. Then another alert. Unknown sender. Email attachment. Subject: ARBNB payout statement. Bennett address. Claire stared until Elliot texted one line. Eleanor's attorney just pulled it. She wiped her face, stood, and smoothed her scrub top like armor. If Linda wanted court, Claire would bring receipts that didn't blink. And when she opened the email, the total earnings number had 5 digits and 1 terrifying comma. In courtroom 3C, Judge Halloway listened without blinking. Melissa Carver spoke first, painting Claire as a tired nurse who works all night and leaves a child to fend for herself. Linda nodded on cue, dabbing dry eyes with a tissue she never actually used. Then Elliot played the porch clip. Linda's voice filled the courtroom. There's no room. Leave the gifts. Go home. A murmur rippled through the benches. Sophie sat rigid between Frank and Linda, small hands folded like she'd been taught to disappear. Carver objected. Audio can be manipulated. Dorothy Palmer stood and raised her right hand when the clerk called her. "That's my camera," she said. "That's my porch view. I uploaded it straight from Ring, and I saved the original." The judge's gaze sharpened. Ryan's smile faltered just a crack. But the order didn't vanish. The judge paused the emergency transfer, yes, yet she set a review hearing for the following week and ordered Sophie to remain with the grandparents until the court can assess stability. Claire heard the word stability like a door locking. When court recessed, Linda guided Sophie down the hallway as if she owned her. Sophie looked back once, eyes wet and mouthed, "I'm sorry." Claire couldn't even touch her. Outside, winter wind slapped Claire's cheeks raw. She opened her banking app again out of habit. Still restricted, her card still useless. A new email from her landlord waited. Pay or quit 3 days. Rent, late fee, court costs. Numbers stacked up like a wall. Her phone rang. Dana from the ER. "Claire, HR got a complaint," Dana said carefully. "Ryan's attorney called the hospital claiming you're unfit and unstable. They're asking for a statement." Claire stared at the courthouse steps, feeling the crowd move around her like she was a rock in a stream. "I have a statement," she whispered. "I have evidence." She sat in her car and finally let the sob hit. Silent, shaking, the kind that doesn't ask permission. When it passed, she wiped her face with a crumpled patient wristband still in her pocket. A text popped up from an unknown number. Attached was a photo of the dining room. 12 place settings, one chair pulled out, untouched, waiting for Sophie all night. The message ended with a name Claire never expected. Tessa Bennett. Tessa Bennett called again at 5:46 p.m., just as Claire was leaving Mercy General's HR office with a stack of forms in her hand. "I shouldn't be doing this," the woman said, voice tight. "But Sophie isn't the only one they shut out. They've been shutting you out for years." "Who is this?" Claire asked, though she already knew the last name. "Ryan's sister," Tessa said. "The one your mother-in-law pretends doesn't exist because I don't play along." They met in a diner 2 blocks from the courthouse, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and a waitress who called everyone honey. Tessa slid into the seat across from Claire and set her phone on the table like a sworn statement. "I was at Christmas dinner," she said. "Linda told Kyle to pull the extra chair out of the dining room before Sophie arrived. Not because the table was full, because she wanted an excuse. She said, 'If Claire thinks she can fight us, we remind her who has the leverage.'" Frank heard it. Evan heard it. They laughed. Claire's stomach rolled, but she kept her face still. "Why tell me now?" Tessa looked down at her coffee. "Because I watched Sophie on that porch through the window, and I didn't move. I hate myself for that." She pushed her phone forward. On screen was a group text labeled Bennett's. Family. Linda's name sat at the top like a crown, messages stacked in gray bubbles. "She's trapped. Custody hearing soon. If she makes a scene, tell Carver." Then, at 4:57 p.m. on Christmas Day, Linda wrote, "No seat for Sophie. Let her walk if she has to. She'll learn." Claire's breath went shallow. This is everything." "There's more," Tessa said, and opened a second folder. photos of the basement door with a keypad, a screenshot of a payout email from Airbnb host, and a bank deposit notification. "I'm in compliance at First Commonwealth," she added quietly. "I can't pull records for you, but I can testify to what I saw on my own device, and I can tell Elliot exactly where to subpoena." Claire's hands trembled around the mug. For the first time in days, the fear didn't feel like a cage. It felt like fuel. Tessa leaned in and whispered, "They're throwing a family meeting tonight at Eleanor's house, and Linda plans to make you sign something to surrender Sophie for good." Claire didn't bring Sophie to Eleanor's house. She left her with Marisol and Dana, 2 women Sophie trusted, and she wrote their numbers on a sticky note taped to Sophie's old phone. "If you feel scared, you call them," Claire said. Sophie nodded, jaw tight, trying to be brave again. Eleanor's porch light burned steady when Claire arrived at 7:58 p.m. Linda's SUV and Ryan's sedan sat in the drive like claims. Inside, voices rose and fell behind the door. Elliot Graves met Claire at the steps, carrying a slim binder. "No talking without me," he murmured. The dining room looked exactly like Dorothy's photo. 12 chairs, polished wood, a centerpiece that still had dried pine needles. Linda stood at the head like a queen. Ryan sat beside her, arms crossed. Frank hovered near the wall, silent. Evan leaned on the counter, pretending he wasn't part of it. Linda pushed a packet toward Claire. "Sign this," she said sweetly. "Voluntary placement. It shows the court you're cooperative. You can still visit Sophie." Claire flipped the page. The words were clean and legal. Temporary guardianship, sole discretion, medical authority, school decisions. At the bottom, a line for her signature. Ryan's voice slid in. "Do the smart thing. You're broke, you're exhausted, and HR is watching. Don't make the judge choose." Claire felt the room tilt. Then Elliot opened his binder and laid down 3 exhibits: Dorothy's porch video transcript, Marisol's time-stamped hallway clip, and Tessa's screenshots of the group text. "We're not debating feelings," Elliot said. "We're documenting premeditation." Linda's smile thinned. "Those are stolen." A cane tapped the floor behind them. Eleanor entered, small but unbent, escorted by a nurse's aide. She looked at the table, then at Linda. "My house," she said quietly. "My rules." Elliot slid one more document forward, an archived Airbnb earnings statement and a notarized notice to vacate addressed to Linda and Frank. Linda's hand shot out for the binder, but Elliot pulled it back. "Touch my evidence and I file obstruction," he said. Ryan stood, eyes hard. "You don't have money for a fight," he snapped. Eleanor's aide set a small recorder on the table. "We do," Eleanor said, "and the court will hear every word spoken in my dining room." Linda's pearls trembled just once, visibly. Eleanor pointed at the signature line and said, "Tonight, someone is leaving this house, and it won't be Claire." Elliot didn't let Linda run the room. He set his binder beside Eleanor's gravy boat like it belonged there, open to a page stamped with a county seal. "This isn't just bad parenting," he said. "It's fraud." He slid the first document toward Judge Halloway's camera-ready copy. The Bennett family trust deed, listing Eleanor as trustee and showing Linda and Frank as occupants with no ownership rights. "That emergency guardianship packet," Elliot added, eyes on Melissa Carver, "claimed the grandparents had a stable home they controlled. They don't." Eleanor's cane tapped once. "I allowed them to live there. I never allowed them to profit. Tessa, pale but steady, held up her phone. These screenshots are from my device, family group chat. Linda planned to remove the extra chair before Sophie arrived. She looked at Ryan. You were on that thread. Ryan's jaw clenched. He didn't deny it. Elliot clicked his laptop and projected a clean spreadsheet. Airbnb payouts preserved and subpoenaed. 47 stays in 6 months. To total earnings, $18,742. Claire heard the courtroom inhale. Deposits went to an account in Linda's name, then split. One transfer to Ryan the day after he filed for emergency custody, one wire to Carver's IOLTA account as retainer. Carver's face tightened. Objection. He added the ring metadata, GPS coordinates, upload time, and Dorothy Palmer's sworn statement. No edits, he said. Same file, same checksum. Even the bailiff shifted, alert at last, toward Claire's folder. Bank certified records, Elliot said, calm. And here's the occupancy violation notice from the city. They rented a private suite that doesn't meet code. If there's a fire, it's a trap. Claire's hand stopped shaking. It wasn't just mean words anymore. It was paper, numbers, dates, motive. Elliot leaned close enough that only Claire could hear. You're not powerless. They built their case on silence. We're ending that. Judge Halloway looked over her glasses at Linda. You used a child to protect an income stream, she said. That is extraordinary. Linda's mouth opened, but no sound came. Eleanor turned to Claire, voice soft for the first time. Tomorrow morning we file for immediate return and sanctions, she said, and tonight my attorney serves a certified 30-day notice to vacate. Claire pictured Sophie's small hands folding around that llama blanket. Hope hurt, sharp and bright. Elliot's phone buzzed and he murmured, The sheriff just confirmed lock change is scheduled at 9 a.m. Claire drove home beneath a slate-gray sky, hands locked on the wheel as if it could keep her from shaking. Sophie's small voice came through the phone from Linda's house, supervised. Thin. Mom, are you mad at me? Claire swallowed hard. Never. I'm proud of you. Listen to me. You tell the truth and you stay kind. I'm coming. When the call ended, the apartment felt hollow. The llama blanket Marisol had loaned still lay folded on the couch, a reminder that strangers had stepped up faster than family. Claire opened her kitchen drawer and pulled out a spiral notebook. Not a diary, a chart. Page 1, what happened. Page 2, what I can prove. She listed it like medication orders. Time, place, witness, file name, porch audio, hallway clip, patrol body cam, Airbnb payouts, group text screenshots, trust deed. Every line ended with a consequence. Perjury, conversion, eviction, sanctions. Elliot called while she worked. Judge Halloway will rule tomorrow, he said. But we only win if you stay steady. I'm done being steady for their comfort, Claire replied. I'll be steady for Sophie. She printed 3 binders at the hospital after her shift, labeled in block letters, Court, H.R., Trust. Dana signed a statement confirming Claire's schedule and the moment she received the voicemail. Marisol signed an affidavit about the camera footage. Dorothy Palmer emailed her ring metadata again, plus a short sentence. I will testify. At home, Claire found her old wedding band's receipt in an envelope marked pawn. She'd kept it like a wound. Tonight, she threw it away. Then she opened Ryan's last text, you don't get money until you stop fighting, and forwarded it to Elliot with one line, financial coercion. She stood in the mirror and practiced speaking without apology. My daughter was turned away. My in-laws lied. I have evidence. Each sentence felt like stepping out of deep water onto solid ground. Before bed, she wrote Sophie a note in thick marker and handed it to the deputy stationed outside Linda's home. Per the court's temporary order, you are loved. You belong. Hold your head up. Then Claire laid out her cleanest navy blazer, clipped her badge to her purse, and set the binders by the door like a weapon made of paper. At 8 a.m., Claire would walk back into the courthouse with a file so sharp it could cut through every single lie. At 8:03 a.m., Claire walked into room 3C in a navy blazer that still smelled faintly of hospital laundry. She set 3 binders on the table like bricks and kept her hands folded so no one could see them tremble. Linda sat behind Carver, lips pressed tight, while Ryan stared at the judge as if staring could bend her. Judge Halloway didn't waste time. I reviewed the supplemental filings overnight, she said. The porch footage, the metadata, the trust deed, and the payout records. She looked at Linda. Your sworn statement conflicts with video and independent witness testimony. That is perjury territory. Carver started to stand. Your Honor. Sit, the judge said sharp. This court issued an emergency order based on representations now shown to be misleading. She turned to Claire. Temporary custody is vacated. The child returns to her mother immediately. She signed, stamped, and slid the order to the clerk. I'm also issuing sanctions for attorney's fees, and I'm referring the false affidavit to the county attorney. Ryan's face went gray. Linda's pearls shook. Behind her, 2 churchwomen stared at the floor. The clerk's pen scratched loud in the silence. Claire watched the judge's signature dry, thinking of the granola bar her card wouldn't buy and the rent notice still taped to her fridge from last week's email. Elliot leaned toward Claire. Now, he whispered. A sheriff's deputy escorted them to Maple Crest. Dorothy Palmer waited on her porch, arms folded, like she'd been born to testify. The deputy knocked, announced the order, and the door opened to the smell of cinnamon and anger. Linda blocked the entry. This is outrageous. Sophie is settled. She needs stability. She needs her mother, the deputy said. Sophie appeared behind Linda, eyes wide, clutching the same tote bag. Claire held her arms out. Come here, Peanut. Linda grabbed Sophie's wrist. Frank finally spoke, voice cracked. Linda, stop. The deputy stepped forward. Ma'am, let go. Linda's fingers loosened like she'd been burned. Sophie ran into Claire's arms, sobbing into the blazer. Claire pressed her cheek to Sophie's hair and felt her own knees unlock. On the porch, Dorothy spoke quietly to the deputy. And about the basement suite, she said, I have guests' photos, too. Linda's head snapped toward her. Across the street, a moving truck rolled up, and Linda realized the locks weren't the only thing changing today. The moving truck idled at the curb while a locksmith unpacked his tools on Eleanor Bennett's porch. Neighbors gathered in scarves, pretending to check mail. Someone across the street held up a phone, live streaming. Linda noticed the little red light and swallowed without a smile, blinking. Deputy Alvarez read from a court order, voice clear. Occupants Linda Bennett and Frank Bennett are to vacate immediately. This property is held in the Bennett Family Trust. Trustee Eleanor Bennett is present. Linda clutched her purse like a lifeline. This is my home. I raised my son here. Eleanor stood small but steady, cane planted. You lived here by permission, she said. You used my house to rent to strangers, and you used my granddaughter to punish a child." Elliot handed Alvarez a stapled packet. Trust deed, the Airbnb payout summary, and Judge Holloway's sanctions order. Dorothy Palmer stepped forward and said, "I'm willing to testify to the porch audio under oath." Tessa, face tight, added, "And I'll authenticate the deposit alerts in the family text thread." Linda's cheeks went blotchy. She tried to laugh. "These people are being manipulated." Claire didn't speak. She just held Sophie's hand and let the evidence do the talking. Sophie stood straight in her green sweater, the one from Goodwill, eyes dry now. When the locksmith drilled the deadbolt, the sound was final, like a gavel. Ryan arrived in a rush, coat unbuttoned, phone already recording. "You can't do this," he snapped at Eleanor. "This is elder abuse. She's not competent." Eleanor lifted her chin. "My physician letter is on file. Try again." Deputy Alvarez turned to Ryan. "Sir, step back. Any interference, and you're trespassed." Carver showed up behind him, heels clicking, but she stopped when she saw the deputy and the stamped orders. For once, she had nothing to say. Boxes began to appear on the lawn, Christmas dishes, framed photos, a plastic tub labeled Kyle. Linda's church friends watched from a minivan, faces stiff with shame. Then Linda made her last move. She lunged for Sophie's old phone in Claire's pocket, hissing, "Give me that! She's mine!" Alvarez caught her wrist. "Ma'am, enough!" Claire pulled Sophie close. "We're leaving," she said. As they walked to the car, Ryan leaned in, voice low. "Enjoy today," he whispered. "CPS will be at your door by nightfall." Claire's screen lit up with an unknown number. Child Protective Services. The call from Child Protective Services wasn't a threat. It was a scheduled visit. "We received a report," the caseworker, Ms. Kim, said gently. "I'm required to check on Sophie. Are you safe right now?" Claire looked at her daughter buckled in the back seat, cheeks still streaked from the morning. "Yes," she said, "and I have documentation." They met at Claire's apartment that afternoon. Ms. Kim wore a plain cardigan, carried a clipboard, and asked practical questions: food, heat, school, supervision. Sophie answered clearly. Marisol sat at the table as a witness, and Dana had emailed Claire's work schedule to Ms. Kim before the knock even came. Then Claire opened the binder labeled Court and slid out the porch transcript, the ring metadata, and the judge's order vacating temporary custody. She added Ryan's text about money and the sanctions order for false affidavits. Ms. Kim read without rushing, then looked up. "This report appears retaliatory," she said. "I'm documenting that." 2 days later, Elliot forwarded the CPS closure letter, unfounded. A copy went to Judge Holloway. The next hearing lasted 7 minutes. The judge warned Ryan that malicious reports would be treated as harassment and increased his child support withholding on the spot. His mouth opened, then shut. For once, he had nothing he could twist. Eleanor's locksmith finished the last lock change, and Eleanor invited Claire and Sophie to stay in the trust house while Claire rebuilt. When Sophie walked through the front door again, she stopped under the wreath hook and whispered, "There's room now." There was always room, Eleanor told her. The wrong people were in charge of the chairs. Spring came early. Claire's landlord dropped the eviction threat after Elliot negotiated a repayment plan using the sanctions check. HR cleared Claire's name, and Dana pinned a note on the breakroom board. "Proud of you." Sophie taped her new drawing to the fridge. 14 chairs, each labeled, each with a sun. At church, Dorothy quietly told the truth, and Linda's saint mask slipped in front of everyone. Claire didn't post revenge online. She didn't need to. The truth lived in timestamps, signatures, and the way her child slept peacefully again. If you're a woman being controlled by fear, money, or family image, start with one step. Write it down. Save the proof and set the boundary. Honor isn't silence. Honor is protection. All right, friends. So the story has come full circle. If you're still here with me right now, it means something in this hit your heart. Maybe the fear of being misunderstood, the pain of being publicly shamed, or the quiet exhaustion of carrying everything alone. And I want you to hear this clearly. Honor doesn't mean staying silent while people rewrite your life. Honor means protecting what's right, especially your child, your peace, and your dignity. One of the biggest lessons here is simple but life-changing. Truth needs structure. Write it down. Save the proof. Build your timeline. Because when someone tries to control you with money, reputation, or family image, calm evidence is stronger than loud emotion. The Stoics said it best. You have power over your mind, not outside events. And another reminder that fits this story perfectly. The obstacle is the way. The pain didn't break her. It became the path to freedom. So if you're in a season where you feel trapped, take one steady step today. Set one boundary. Tell one trusted person. Keep one receipt of the truth. And if this ending gave you a little hope, do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe. Someone out there needs this kind of healing reminder tonight.